And thank you for joining us on TRP Live, a show created by the folks who believe in No Soul Left Behind, the Reclamation Project. This is a show that was started to have candid discussions on real issues that impact people. I am your host tonight, Stan Mackey, and back with us, we have the crew, Dr. Dent, Terrence, Paul. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Hey,
How my brothers doing?
I'm good. I don't know about them, but
Good.
I'm good.
Y'all got smiles on your faces, man. Despite what's going on, man, you look excited.
Yeah, man. I'm alive. Come on.
Come on, Dr. Den, we can't hear you, so you gotta fix that mic. Mic check. My mic sounds nice.
Check one.
Check one. Come on. You may wanna. You may need to leave the studio, Dr. Den, and come back in. Chris, leave the studio and then come back in. That'll do it. If you
Okay.
can't fix it the other way. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Well, it's
I
too
heard.
late. It's too late. So, anyways, hey, we're back. It's been a while. Good to see my brothers' faces. And
Brother Terrence, I see you.
yes, good. Yeah, cover up that light because that light was creating a glow. So, tonight, where do we go from here? So, taking over the top spot, and yeah, let's get Dr. Chris back in there. Taking over the top spot in most minutes covered in the news from the pandemic are the protests. So, of course, unless you've been hiding underneath a rock, you are aware that this country is in a state of disagreement. Let's say it kindly. Now, 2 weeks ago, the topic Jesus on social justice was covered, led by our very own Terrence Clark here tonight. And at that time, things were just getting started in America. Protests had just begun. Cities were beginning to organize. Word was getting out to other countries. Hearts globally were being touched by what was going on, and lots of momentum was building. In fact, I want to share this clip here in just a moment because I think this represents the culmination, kind of like the height of intensity and contention, and this recognition that there's a sad state of affairs taking place here in America. So I just want to share this clip with you.
Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters. America has looted black people. What is happening in America is that white nationalism ideology is running wild. And the reason why buildings are burning is because this city, this state, would prefer preserving that white nationalism and that white supremacist mindset over arresting, charging, and helping to convict 4 officers who killed a black man. That is the reality of what we're dealing with. This is not just a few cops doing things across the country. This is not a good cop versus bad cop situation. This is Ahmaud Arbery being shot down by white men on the streets of Georgia. Breonna Taylor being killed in her home. This is in New York City where we were until freedom. We were just in New York fighting the police officers who, in the name of social distancing, were damn near killing black young people on our streets. This is a coordinated activity happening across this nation. And so we are in a state of emergency. Black people are dying in a state of emergency. We cannot look at this as an isolated incident. The reason why buildings are burning are not just for our brother George Floyd. They're burning down because people here in Minnesota are saying to people in New York, to people in California, to people in Memphis, to people all across this nation, nation, enough is enough. And we are not responsible for the mental illness that has been inflicted upon our people by the American government, institutions, and those people who are in positions of power. I don't give a damn if they burn down Target, because Target should be on the streets with us, calling for the justice that our people deserve. Where was AutoZone at the time when Philando Castile was shot in a car, which is what they actually represent? Where were they? So if you are not coming to the people's defense, then don't challenge us when young people and other people who are frustrated and instigated by the people you pay. You are paying instigators to be among our people out there throwing rocks, breaking windows, and burning down buildings. And so young people are responding to that. They are enraged, and there's an easy way to stop it. Arrest the cops. Charge the cops. Charge all the cops. Not just some of them. Not just here in Minneapolis. Charge them in every city across America where our people are being murdered. Charge them everywhere. That's the bottom line. Charge the cops. Do your job. Do what you say this country is supposed to be about, the land of the free for all. It has not been free for Black people, and we are tired. Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters. America has looted Black people. America looted the Native Americans when they first came here. So looting is what you do. We learned it from you. We learned violence from you. We learned violence from you. The violence was what we learned from you. So if you want us to do better, then damn it, you do better.
Wow.
Scathing, very scathing.
Yeah. Powerful, powerful, powerful. I'm gonna give everybody a chance to respond to that just briefly. Tonight, we're certainly talking about where do we go from here, but I wanted to share that clip because I felt like that served as, once this went viral, this actually went out pretty early when she gave this speech, but by the time it went viral and the bulk of people who saw it finally did see it, I think that it represented like this, the peak, the climax of just fed upness, being fed up, being in the state of fed up. And so, you know, you were beginning to see all of this organization taking place from city to city with the protests, the peaceful protests, I might add. And so this is, you know, this represents, you know, we're fed up and these are the reasons why. And if you wanted to understand how this could be happening in this country, she shared some history. So as a result, now the world is watching. In fact, not only did the world watch, the world supported, the world joined in. And this was certainly indicative by looking at, you know, you just turn on world news and you look at people organizing in cities all around the world, from Australia to France, London, South Korea, almost any point of the earth, you would find that Black Lives Matter was the, not just the hashtag, but the motto, but the buzzwords. So where do we go from here? Now that we have the attention of the world, what's next? What's next? But before I do that, I do want to give you guys a chance to just give your thoughts on that powerful statement, that speech that Tamika gave.
I think that
I'll respond to it. This is Yvonne
probably
Lynum. Sorry, it's a few minutes late today. I saw Tamika when she gave this speech live on the air, and I was just cheering with her. Like, I could relate to every single thing that she said. I could relate to it. Not that I agree with every single thing. I don't feel like you should burn down Target. I'm at Target like every day.
Well, she didn't actually say that, but yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do feel like I can really relate to it. You know, usually I'm a very vocal person, and I'm on my Facebook talking about different issues or what have you, talking to friends. This whole season, I've just been silent because I've been overwhelmed with how all of this has affected me personally. And it took me weeks and weeks to be able to even respond to it, because it was so draining to even start back with, oh, now you get it, oh, now you understand what these people have been protesting about, oh, now you agree with Kaepernick where before you didn't agree with him, now you see that there's a reason for Black Lives Matter. You know, just that whole awakening was really too much for me. Like, I didn't want to school anybody on diversity or inclusion. I did, and that's part of what I've done throughout my 20-year career as an educator, is schooling people on the reason why diversity is so important, diversity training is so important, inclusion training. And I just got to a point of being fed up. And so I can totally understand, you know, the passion that she speaks from. And even though I'm not personally that radical, I definitely can empathize with every single word that she says. And so, you know, I'm not the person to take it to the streets like she is. So I have a different approach, and we can talk more about how you know, where we go from here as this panel evolves, our different opinions. But I can definitely agree with her approach as just being fed up and tired of it all. So
Okay, Paul, I know.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul, I know you were jumping in, or you were talking. I don't think Yvonne heard you. You were talking at the time.
Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay. From what I'm listening to, and contrary to what more peaceable people might say, this is probably something that had to happen. I hate to say that, because I'm a person who would rather think and use logic rather than operating on knee-jerk reactions. But this is not so knee-jerk right now. This is something that has been brewing for quite a while. And it comes from the fact that the Supreme Court has given law enforcement great leeway in how they can use force to affect custody. And so because they've been given that latitude to be able to use not only excessive force, but even deadly force, and get away with it, this was something that had to happen. Imagine, if you will, that you were in a position where you were complying. You were totally compliant. You were handcuffed. And you think that the next step is that they're going to either roll you on your side or they're going to sit you on your behind. But the next words that you hear are, he's reaching for my gun. At that point, I think you would have to decide whether I'm going to go to prison or whether I'm going to or whether I'm going to die. I think I would rather go to prison and fight my case in prison rather than just laying there and allowing somebody to just take my life like that. But these are the hard questions that are going to come up. And so, and that's simply because of the fact that a lot of latitude has been given to law enforcement, of which I was law enforcement for 20 years of my life, law enforcement. And so I'm probably more qualified to speak about that portion of it on this panel, but I'll hear what others have to say, and then I'll go ahead and speak in kind.
Okay. Anybody else wanted to comment briefly? Because we definitely want to move to, you know, where do we go from now? What are the solutions? Because that's what people are interested in now. That's certainly what I'm interested in, and I thought should be the thrust of this gathering tonight, this panel, because we've got the attention now. The world is watching. If you wanted to get everybody's attention, you have it now. Now, what do you do with it? But anybody else want to comment on it?
I was just saying she did it. Oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying she did a good job. She had a lot of energy. She was able to articulate so eloquently, but there are a lot of words, and she was she spoke from her heart. But I'm at the stage now for more tools and how do we resolve these issues and what steps can we take to ensure that this happens less, because it's still going to happen, but less. I'll pass.
Got it. I think I see Terrence motioning. Coming into remark. Okay, so let me just give a point of clarity. I just want to make it clear to our listeners that Tamika didn't actually, promote or endorse the looting of Target. What she said was that she doesn't care. In fact, what she said was that at this particular juncture, don't come to me trying to get sympathy for Target when there are other issues. So I just wanted to make that clear that she was not condoning it. I don't know that anyone who's been participating in peaceful protests actually condones or endorses it. But if you were to ask them whether their heart is broken or they're sympathetic that it has happened, they'll probably tell you no too. But with that said, so let's talk about solutions. So how can you leverage this?
Okay.
What are solutions? And I want everybody actually to give your own. You share your own solution, whatever that is, and then you support. Provide us with your position, your argument for your position.
Yeah, we thought that cameras would be one of the things that would help. However, we're finding that cameras are turned off at certain junctures of these incidents. And so maybe there needs to be a little bit more teeth in that right there so that we can get the whole picture. Because one of the things that always comes up is that we didn't see what started this, how this all started and everything. And so maybe there needs to be more teeth right there. Another thing is that, we need to make sure that we don't have these knee-jerk reactions to such things like, if you remember back in the 80s, we had the crack epidemic. It was jumping, man. If you were down in Los Angeles or if you were in the Bay Area during that time, man, the body counts were high. And you remember that Chicago wasn't anything compared to LA back in the 80s, man. It was the wild, wild west. But because of that, we had these knee-jerk reactions, man, whether we did 3 strikes laws, we did the war on drugs and so forth, and we started doing some, and we started getting tougher. If you remember down in Los Angeles, we had this thing called the Batarang, and the Batarang was one of those. It was one of those things, man. It was legendary. It even had a song to go with it, the Batarang.
But, I remember. You can't stop it, baby. Hey, but Paul, watch this. So, if someone asks you, they say, "Paul, listen, I want you to come to this meeting, to this committee meeting. The county is having a board of supervisors meeting. We want you to share with us what you say is a solution to the problem." What do you tell them? And
I immediately go. I'll immediately do what it is that I was doing right there, reminding us how we got to this point. And if we begin to remember how we got to this point, maybe we can start chipping away at some of those things. Because like I said, we had these knee-jerk reactions that put us in this place. And then Overton's window came through and said that, hey, we don't like this. Overton's window, meaning mainstream thought, said that we don't like this. And so therefore, you know, we're going to start chipping away. So one of my things that I would probably bring up is that, listen, in order to kind of, you know, tighten up the reins a little bit on officers, everyone responds to money. Everyone responds to money.
So take some money out. Take some money away.
No. Because you have to be smart about this. I hear them saying defund the police. I'm a former cop. Defund them. Defund them. Who's then gonna train them? All right, because you're gonna need better training. You're probably gonna need longer training in order to become an officer instead of 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You probably need to actually go like you would be going to a college course and becoming an officer. You would have to. I'm sorry.
Oh no, got it.
Okay.
Here, let me.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
That second thought. Terrence, you want to jump in? Share us what because I want to get everybody's thought. What do you what's your solution?
Well, before I get to a solution, I jotted down a few thoughts as we were watching that clip that you played. And the first thing I would like to say is that we have to be careful that we don't become the black nationalists to their white nationalists. Right? Mm-hmm. That's very, very important, because if you become like your enemy, really, what's the difference? But I know when we had this Jesus and social justice discussion a few weeks ago, one of the things that I was desperately trying to communicate was that, albeit it is our responsibility as people of color to pick up the mantle ourselves, we also have to be careful. And here's where that black nationalist mentality comes in terms of not being a totally exclusive club. Whereas you back at what worked in the civil rights era of the 60s, and that's the fact that there were people of all ethnicities working hand in hand to get that needle to move, and that's still very relevant today. As a matter of fact, as I was sitting with my wife getting something to eat earlier this evening, I was scrolling through CNN, and it just really just blew me away how I can't think of his name, but it's Serena Williams' husband. This brother sits on the board of a major tech company, and he made a serious move, something just totally unprecedented. The brother stepped down from his position and requested that the seat that he vacated be filled by a person of color. They immediately do this, right? Not only did he do that, but he would still receive some type of compensation from them, right? Mind you, this is an Anglo brother. This is what I'm trying to iterate towards. This is an Anglo brother. He's gonna get a compensation continuously, and he said what he's gonna start off by doing is putting $1 million donation towards Colin Kaepernick's camp called Know Your Rights. See, now that's something that's very important, because most of us walking down the streets of the hood, Paul mentioned LA and the Bay Area, but listen, I got stopped by the police one time in Oakland this particular time. This was really in a nutshell proving my point. I told the police that I was going to exercise my right to remain silent, right? And he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Why are you asking me if you're supposed to be the law?" Right? So if the law itself doesn't even know, this person is supposed to represent the law, an authoritative figure doesn't even know the law, what are the chances of the average person walking up and down the streets of any given hood that they know their rights? And so that's why it's very important, the work that people like Colin Kaepernick are doing, the work that this brother, I have to find out his name, but Serena Williams' husband is doing. But the whole point of all of that is we have to work hand in hand. We can't do this thing alone.
All right, Doc Chris, go ahead, jump in. I don't think we've heard from you yet. What's your solution?
Well, if you look through the hallways of history, we found in the 1960s that about 80% of our black men had both parents. And so my first tool that I would say is do some role playing. Role play with your African-American boys or young men and teach them how to speak to cops. Teach them how to say, "Yes, sir," "No, sir." teach them not to say anything until they ask the question why they pulled you over. I believe a lot of African American men would be alive if they would take their time to listen to the questions that they were asked and appropriately answer the question. I will also say, do devotion with your young African men and women. Start off, everything starts at home. I listen to everybody's discussion, and no one says that it starts at home. So I'll be the first to say it. You cannot ask the government, the federal, the state to do your job. It starts at home. So we have to train up. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go. When they get old, they should not depart from it. After that, teach them rules on how to navigate in the street and with officers. We're looking at about 1% of officers are bad cops. And that's Caucasian and some African Americans. There are some bad cops. My last thing I would say is teach your children and young men how to pray. In those situations that they find themselves, they should know how to pray and keep silent. I think learning to keep silent sometimes probably could save your life.
All right, I like that. I have to say, education is what you're saying. Basically, educate African Americans how to be more effective in their ability to interact with law enforcement. I like that too. I do find it an interesting statistic. I won't ask you where you got 1%, but I just find it interesting that 1% of the cops are bad and 99% are good. I kind of disagree with that number. I don't know who that source was, but that's another matter, because it is interesting that is a take. I want to get Yvonne though. I'd like for you to chime in and share with us what your solution is. What would you, if you had the floor and you had some dignitaries or you had some people in positions of power and influence to speak with them, and they asked you, what are your solutions? What do you think we should do in order to resolve this? You've got momentum now, Yvonne. So, what do you want to do at this juncture?
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last question. What were you saying?
What are your solutions? What do you want to do now that you have the momentum? What do you suggest we do to solve some of these problems?
Well, I know that I was talking to someone the other day about the Montgomery boycott, and they were telling me that to this day, there still isn't a bus system in Montgomery. So not only was that effective, but years later, there's respect for that movement, so much so that it's been difficult, 50 years later, to even get a bus system there. And to me, the only, of course, there's different ways to come at it, but finance is the most effective way to change policy and to make real change happen. And so I've already started seeing what Black and brown businesses I can patronize. And I just think that that's, a logical thing to do anyway. And so that, to me, that's the main solution, is just not today, just very systematically moving money to a more, to work within the community and just see the result of that long term. I think if a lot of people did that long term, there would be some profound awakening about why it's so unfair how Black and brown people are treated. And I think those awakenings would come from a lack of finance, how we're spending money now and how we could be spending money with a little tweaking. So that's what I think is the biggest solution. Of course, I believe in partnering with anyone that wants to partner. If you look back through history, you will see many people of all colors, of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds have given their life for this movement. And you can see it all throughout history. So it's not just something that African Americans are passionate about. There's so many people that really want a fair reality for African Americans, not just ourselves. And so there's a lot that can be done, and it's just for us to get that moving.
Got it. Doc Carey, I see you, baby boy. Good to hear from you. So I hear what you're saying, Yvonne. You said basically, hey, listen, recognize the power that you have with your money, African American community, and if there's one thing that gets people's attention, withhold the dollars. Okay. Let me see who's got that sound, because I got some feedback. Withhold your dollars, and you get people's attention pretty quickly. All right, so that's one thing that we can do. Let me perhaps I need to rephrase it. I guess what I'm looking for is what can, because these are everything that everyone has suggested up to this point are things that can be done without the benefit of protesting and killing and rioting and the world saying we got your back, we support you. I guess so I want to try to rephrase and see if maybe this perhaps it was my lack of communication. You now have momentum. What can be done? What do you think can be done on a national scale? Let's just use that as the reference. National scale. What laws? What are there any laws that could be either made or modified, or policies modified such that improvements can be made, or fewer deaths will take place? Is there anything that we can do that's on a national scale? Because remember now, you've got momentum. Everybody's listening. People are willing. Just about everyone is receptive to what you have to say. What do you want? What can we do to make things better? And what will make you happy? Now, I've been seeing like people, our Caucasian brethren, taking up communion with some African Americans. I don't particularly agree to that. I don't think they need to do that, but that is a gesture that some people have just been, our Caucasian brothers have been compelled to do. So if that does not signify and prove my point that people are receptive to what you have to say, take advantage of it. Not in a bad way, but while people are listening, well, say what great advice you have. And so I want to open up the floor one more time now, because I'm really looking for, what can we do? Because this isn't going to be, it's not going to be, people are not going to be this receptive any longer. What I'm afraid of personally is that, in a few months, in a month or two, pandemic news is going to overtake protest news once again. Black Lives Matter will take a back seat, and in hindsight, if we look back, are we going to find that there are any improvements? Well, I hope the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But while it's hot,
yeah,
all right,
I see one thing.
I like this. Before you go, Sister Portia, fire bad cops. I like to get rid of corrupt judges, pay teachers. Now we can see that right there on the screen. Make it easy for Lex. Yes. Love it. Thank you, Portia, for that. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, I liked what she said. Also, I would add the word qualified blacks. Just don't put blacks on there just to say you have a black person on there. Everybody needs to be qualified to be in a position. Also, if you do not have qualified to vote, that's step one. Everybody that is not qualified to vote, get qualified to vote. And instead of walking in the streets and doing all the crazy stuff, take yourself and go to a poll and make your vote count for something. So that's one. Two, you can go around other ethnicities, the Caucasians, they're agreeing with you. I've talked to two today, and for some reason, they're still calling us black people. And so I had to correct them. So we're now called African Americans. And they always say, I love these black people. The black people doing this, the black. So, and they're trying their hardest to fit in and grin and smile. That's fine. But but look at the history. They know what we're about. They know that we get angry and we make a lot of noise and it's going to dissipate. And so that's what they're waiting for, is to dissipate. So I think the first key is to ensure that you can vote in your state and make sure when it's time to vote, you show up and vote.
All right. I love that. I love that. And I'm just going to say, too, real quick, I don't have a problem with black. Black is fine with me. In fact, I almost prefer the African American. It has to do with the, race versus ethnic identity. And, it's a sociology issue. But I understand for some it's not appropriate. I was telling to my white sister and brother, and you can still call me black. I'm good with it. But voting, though, I love it. Now, let me add this real quick, then I'm gonna let somebody else jump in. I gotta say this. And I'm gonna make somebody upset, but that's all right. It won't be the first time I've done that. I like to emphasize right about now in the new millennium, 2020 and moving forward, that people vote for the purpose of making their vote count locally, not just locally, but at the representative level, House of Representative level, and the Senate level. If you want to place, my thing now is place emphasis on those positions. You know why? Because we don't hear this talked about often. It's nice to talk about who you're voting for president, but at the end of the day, your vote did not vote the president in. The Electoral College vote did. Now, if anything, if you want to stress anything, campaign for the electorate that is going to submit the vote for president. And for anyone who's saying, well, Stan, the whole point is that the electorate will vote based on their constituents' feeling and sentiments. Well, that hasn't happened the last couple of elections. So they don't seem to be following that rule of order or that tradition. So our votes it's been nullified. It's a popular vote, and that's why they call it as such. Now, I'm not saying don't vote for president. Do vote for president. But put more emphasis on where your vote counts for your U.S. senator, for your U.S. representative, who make the laws, who create the laws that then go to the president. Okay. And then at the local level. So I love the idea of making sure that everybody votes, but I gotta say that I'm tired of hearing people talk about, just go out and vote. And it's mainly this emphasis on voting for president, when in fact, we live in a republic, and in a republic, not a democracy, in a republic, we don't vote in the president. The Electoral College does. That's the way it was designed. They didn't trust your vote. All right, let me pass the baton because y'all about to get me up.
But that's true. But what I was emphasizing is,
and I wasn't saying you either.
No, I know, but my emphasis was qualifying to vote. See, a lot of people don't even qualify to vote. So you have to be in a certain stature to be able to qualify to vote. Some people have felonies, so you can't even vote. So
Kentucky just allowed felons to vote.
Well, so that's a strategic plan.
Your point, I like that. Maybe that's one thing that we can campaign for all states to allow felons to be able to vote. If they've done their time, let them vote. Why not?
True. Yeah, Kentucky's a red state, so you would think that if felons were able to vote, that it would help those people who are more liberal. But one of the things that I wanted to say is that you have to understand, man, these laws, what we're talking about, what the whole thing was about, the riot and everything, was about police overreach. And because of the police overreach, what we ended up having is a situation where it boiled over. People were sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so you have this thing about qualified immunity, which the United States Supreme Court gave the police department so they could shoot you and not be held accountable for it and not have to worry about lawsuits and everything like that.
That's right.
There's another thing that they gave them. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but you have to understand that the Supreme Court has given your municipal cops great leeway in how they can affect custody. And with that, palpable unreasonable conduct will go unpunished. That was the thing that was in Casella versus Hughes. It said that palpably unreasonable conduct will go unpunished. And so you could basically do whatever you wanted as a police officer and get away with it.
So policy change then seems to be the direction you're going in.
And you're going to have to do that. That right there is going to take a long time. Why? Because what happened when President Obama was president? He had to go up against a Republican Senate and a Republican House of Representatives, which you guys are talking about. You need to vote. All right, you need to vote. And they did not help him. The U.S. Senate did not help him fill any lower courts. Nor you just thought that it was the United States Supreme Court that he wasn't able to fill those seats. But there were hundreds of district courts that had judges that resigned, retired, whatever, and those seats weren't filled. And
absolutely.
And you're going to have to deal with that for the next 30, 40 years down the line.
Yeah, right? You're right. So that one hurts. Because some of those are life appointments.
Not for you to just vote for your U.S. representatives, but you got to vote for the mayor. You got to vote for your city council people. You got to go to those hearings because these things that they are doing affect your life. The 105 freeway is a prime example. That the 105 freeway came cutting right through Inglewood, came cutting right through Hawthorne, came cutting right through South Central Los Angeles and cutting through and cutting its way on into Watts.
LAX.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And
I remember when it went up.
Vote at because you don't vote at the local level, you say, I'm not going to vote during that time. You'll vote during the presidency. Well, then you hurt yourself. You do yourself an injustice when you don't get out and vote. I don't care if they got a vote that comes up in the middle of March. Take your behind out there and vote. At least see what's going on, because
I like that.
Because of lack of knowledge, the people perish.
Come on now. That's right. So watch this, and that was my whole point of emphasizing all the levels of government, because it's just not effective, and it just makes no sense, really, frankly, to only emphasize a national level when in fact your vote doesn't even count there at the end of the day. So I'm with you. So you're talking about voting, you're stressing voting and also education. So those are two things that have come out. Let me go ahead and let somebody else jump in. And Portia, I want to acknowledge once again what she said. She pointed out some very great things. We're talking about imagery and perception. You know, how Black men are portrayed. Oh my goodness. Yeah, how do we do that? How do we change that image other than coming out with new network and really doing an effective job of compelling our people, not just our people, but everyone, to watch television where we control the imagery? Oh my goodness. Anybody else? Let me get rid of that feedback.
I would like to.
Oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to speak to that as well. Portia brought up something really important. Many times people are misportraying our Black men, our stories in the media, and they're making it seem like our statistics are so far out of scope, and Black men typically leave their families more so than other men leave their families, and all, everything is skewed. The stories that they tell about us is all skewed. And so I don't know how to bring that back in so that we can tell our own stories in our own ways, in the most accurate ways. I don't know how to do that, but I know that there is a definite need for it. And also, this goes back to what Paul was saying about voting, and not just being at the vote, but also being at the table at the weekly meetings, not just just the community meetings. We had a family meeting recently via Zoom because there were so many of us that were reactive from what's been going on in our world. And one of my cousins is a police officer, and she was very vocal to say, you know, you need to not just show up to vote. You need to be in those community meetings. You need to be there a couple times a month so they can see your face, so they can hear what you have to say about these different policies that they're voting in. And so that's really important too. One thing I learned is that, you know, I'm going to be more active on a community level, and that'll make a huge difference to my community. So yeah, I just wanted to add that as well.
Yes, yes. Anybody else? I like it. I like it. Come on now, don't get quiet on me. So we got education. Talked about education. Paul alluded to that a little bit earlier. Chris, you alluded to that earlier with you know, fathers teaching your boys. You know, this is something that I've gone over with my boys, how to behave. You know, and let me just share it here, just in case for some reason a lot more people watch this broadcast or end up eventually watching it than we anticipate. And that is, I have found it to be very effective that when I am pulled over, I do but 2 or 3 things. 1, I roll down my windows. 2, I put my left hand outside the window so that my left hand is visible. Secondly, I turn on the dome light, particularly if it's dark. Whether or not I have anything, the light is going on, and then my right hand is on the wheel, and then my attitude is you know, it's respectful. In fact, it might be a little bit on the scale of a chipper side. I don't like being pulled over, but I don't know why just yet, and I don't know whether he's gonna let me go without a ticket, and all of that may happen. So I'm gonna do my best to try to maximize the best possible outcome. So I do teach my boys to do that very thing. So Chris, when you point out that, you know, we need to make sure that our boys are educated, absolutely, every father needs to do that. But I also agree that, you know, perhaps somewhere someone, and I know it can't be me, I just can't do everything in the world, neither can all of us here, but somebody has got to be able to take up that baton, and create some sort of community awareness, some place where young boys can go. But I agree. So we've talked about that. We talked about education. Is there anything else? Imagery and changing the perception of Black men and women on television. Anything else? We got about 13 minutes. I know we got at least one other good solution. Let me go ahead and get Doc Chris in there, and then Paul will come to you.
Okay.
I also want to emphasize too, I've also been a part of a religious organization that also goes to the police department. And what I've heard the officers actually say this, some of them are fearful, and a lot of things that they do sometimes is out of fear. And we don't hear that officers are human as well. So when they get out there and things start to escalate sometime, they do some things out of fear. So we want to keep that component in. And I want to nail in that you have to be connected to the source, and the source is God. And if you believe in God, as I do, and as we do, that God is the key. So we lock into Him, then we can treat others better, and then we can all make it to the kingdom. I pass.
Come on, Paul, and then Terrence.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, you know, education is fine. All right, we need to know about our civil rights. We need to know about our criminal rights, and we need to know about, you know, those things that put us that when we don't know about those things, we become sheep. We become victimized and everything like that. But I want to read something to you real quick, man. If you remember Christopher Dorton was the officer who used to work for the LAPD. He got fired, and he got fired because, you know, some internal politics of some sort, and he went rogue. And I was in LA at the time that this happened, and I can remember LAPD changing up their tactics, where one cop would probably stay in the car, the other cop would go into Starbucks. Now you got both cops in Starbucks. One is guarding the door, and the other one is getting the order done and everything. The tactics had completely changed. You knew LAPD was worried right now. And I also have to say this right here. Look, we understand that there are knuckleheads out there. All right. I used to be one. Okay. I used to be a knucklehead. And sometimes you got a butt whooping coming. All right. I'll say that. Okay. But we're talking about overreach. We're talking about once we get into excessive force, once we get into deadly force. That's what we're kind of talking about right now. So Christopher Dorton said, those officers who joined the South Bureau divisions, the 77th, which is over there on Martin Luther King, the Southwest, Southeast, and Harbor divisions, with the sole intent to victimize minorities who are uneducated and unaware of the criminal law, civil law, and civil rights. You prefer the South Bureau because a use of force, deadly force, is likely, and the individual you use of force on will likely not report it. You are, and then he said that those cops were a high value target. He was going to go after those guys. But you have to understand that you can comply. You can be totally compliant. You can have your hands on the steering wheel, like the young kids that were there in Atlanta. They got pulled out of the car, pepper sprayed, got their tires slashed. This is the police department that did this. And all of a sudden, man, you're telling people that they have to stay calm when they see all the time that they are getting killed left and right. Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, the other brother that was in the Walmart. You had Breonna Taylor. You had the 7-year-old child who was asleep in their house, and when they came in, and that's another thing. Get rid of no knock. Get rid of no knock. No knock. Does
Tennessee
not work.
just did that. Let's see. Was it Tennessee or one of them got rid of it?
Somebody got rid of it. Somebody just
got rid of it. I think it was Kentucky. It was
happened in Louisville.
Where Breonna Taylor.
All right. But what I'm saying is that you can completely be in compliance.
Okay.
And you can still get to a place where police are not held accountable for their overreach. All right.
Got it.
And so come on, man, you've got to get in there and how many of us call our congressman? Has anybody ever called their congressman? Has anyone ever bothered the congressman when he finally came home to his office? No? Has anybody ever gone to the state capitol? This is what the Black Panthers were doing. All right. Yeah. Has anyone ever done this type of thing?
So you got to lobby. Yeah. So you got to lobby.
I haven't done this. Yeah. And so
let me get Terrence in as we wrap up.
You have to make your representatives accountable also.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Terrence, go ahead. As we.
What I was gonna say is, back in the '90s in the Bay Area in Oakland, where I grew up at, there was this officer named Bruce Grabinski. He died in the East Bay Hills fire. He actually died in the line of duty saving a little girl. But I actually had a personal relationship with this guy, and you can tell by the last name of Grabinski that this wasn't a brother. But what I liked about him is that the way he policed his beat, his community. You know what I mean? He was a real respectful type of guy. He'd pull up on you. He had some rank too, but he'd pull up on you as a senior officer.
I'm just glad that.
I'm sorry? Yeah, as a senior officer, he would always be in the passenger seat. And so what he would do is when he pulled up, he would just tell you, look, just have your IDs ready. I don't care if you got warrants, this, that, and the other. You need to take care of that. But I'm here for the real stuff, right? He run your name and your ID back. And his only hitch was don't run. Because if you run, it's going to make you mad. You make you mad, there's consequences for that. The flip side to that is there was another situation where I got stopped in my neighborhood by this by a group of police officers. So while one of them is running my name, the other one has his gun pointed at me. And this goes back to something that Dr. Dent said. The one with his gun drawn on me, his hands are shaking. So much so that I turned to the other officer and I said, hey man, can you do something about this? And he turned and he looked at the brother. He said, man, put that thing down. What's wrong with you? So the guy holstered his weapon, My whole point is, if you scared, you shouldn't be on the street. Give them a desk job, or just don't give them a job at all.
That's
right? Because you're going to
right.
cost somebody their life, right? There's a certain, they need to come up with some type of viable psychological profile for what an even keel individual that can deal with crisis situations looks like. Because obviously what we have right now is not working.
That's right.
So yeah, man, that would be one of my key suggestions right there, though.
Go ahead.
I pass the baton.
30 seconds, Paul.
This goes back to training. All right, what we saw with the George Floyd thing was that this was something that all cops learned, that when you put a person in handcuffs, you're supposed to put them on their side, or you're supposed to have them sitting down on their buttocks. Because if not, even without those cops on him, because of the stress, he could have died of asphyxiation. But he had 3 cops on him, plus 1 on his neck. So it was going to happen. But this comes back to training, okay? And I don't think that defunding the police, we have to be very careful that we don't do our own overreach. Kind of like the Patriot Act after 9/11. We don't want to do our own overreach. We don't necessarily want to defund the police departments because they need to be trained and they need more training. They probably need to be just as EMT qualified as the fire department in a lot of cases. I'll pass the phone because I know other people need to speak.
Go ahead, Yvonne. Final thought.
Usually I would agree with Paul saying the training is the answer, but I read an article this week that said that there was a trainer that was shot and killed by the police station that he trained.
Mercy.
So I'm thinking maybe training isn't always the answer.
Wow. I think we caught most of that.
But I think that there's something that we can all do. There's different things that we can all do.
Your audio is breaking up, Yvonne, but I think we got most of that.
Community meeting. For Paul, it's voting. For somebody else, it's protesting. For someone else, it's something else. But there's something that we can all do. And maybe those incremental things end up making a huge difference in the end. So I just challenge everyone to think of that one thing that you can do.
Okay. Yvonne, you're breaking up. Yvonne, you're breaking up. We can't hear you. Chris, go ahead and give me your final thought. Yvonne, if you can hear us, you're breaking up. We can't hear you. Chris, final thought.
I think we have momentum. Let's keep running, and let's run in the same direction. And let's vote. Let's keep pressing, and let's leave a mark, and let's demand respect while being respectful. Once again, let's demand respect while being respectful.
I'll give my final thought. My final thought and suggestion is this, and that is that I read a study while I was working on my graduate degree. There was a guy who had his thesis was on higher education for law enforcement. He was law enforcement himself. He was working on same degree as me, Master of Public Administration, and he had study after study, and I bought into it. He immediately sold me on it, and it goes like this. And I want to share this: the higher the education of the officer, the lower the chances that they're going to be involved in a violent encounter with a suspect or with citizens. So the higher the education of the officer, the lower the chances that the interaction with citizens will end with violence. And it makes so much sense. The more education you have, particularly in this case, he was campaigning for officers to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. And I might not under any other circumstances have agreed with that, but the data you cannot argue with. The data was showing that there was absolutely a correlation between the two, but it makes sense if you think about it. When you go through the education system and you receive your bachelor's degree, you have already taken all sorts of classes that are educating you on different thought, different ideas, other people's opinions, both in your own culture, outside your culture. And by the time you come out of that, your outlook is different. You think a little bit differently. Your mind is a lot more open to suggestions, to ideas. And so when you have an officer who's encountering a situation, someone with that sort of background, with that sort of education, will think differently. They will approach the situation differently. Someone whose education is not as high, well, they're only gonna live up to the level of education that they have. And coming out of high school, that's not very. That's you know, there are exceptions to the rule, but you know, you're not getting a whole lot. And so I would like to see that as a campaign, to see that there be a campaign for law enforcement to gradually graduate, since it can't happen, maybe it can happen abruptly, graduate to bachelor's degree minimum. So if someone would ask me, that's my suggestion. No more hiring a law enforcement without a bachelor's degree. Not because, you know, well, I'm gonna keep it short, but at the end of the day, the bachelor's degree means that the level of dedication to study, research is much higher than it is for someone with a high school diploma, and it translates into better numbers on the street, and that's what the research shows. Wow, I know we can keep going, but we gotta. I just had to give my little bit in. Listen, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate everybody coming, taking the time, and being with us. Yvonne, you're back. We listened for a while, but the audio was choppy, and we were figuring it out. I think most of our audio got most of that. And so we know it'll be better on the next one. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We hope you tune in again next week. We're going to have another broadcast of TRP Live. Remember to share, like, and subscribe so you can stay in the know of all the upcoming events. In fact, we've got one coming up next Wednesday. If you haven't seen the announcements, we're going to have a featured story where we're going to highlight an author, singer, Eddie Harvey Jr. He's going to be interviewed by our very own Dr. Chris Dent, who's on the channel today, and we're going to talk about a book that he wrote that talks about how Daddy does things differently. And so we're going to showcase this African American man. How you like that? How you like that label, that moniker I just used, Dr. Dent, the African American man who, in a positive light, who's doing wonderful things. And so that's next week. We hope you also join us tomorrow, where we're going to have worship and going to have some Bible learning. Let's see. It starts at 1 tomorrow, Pacific Standard Time. The topic for tomorrow is, could there be errors in the Bible? Yes, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to discuss if they make a difference. So anyways, again, we just thank you for joining us. And I just want to end with saying, oh, the depths of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and how unfathomable his ways. For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. Until next time, good night.